Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a DFS preview for the 2021 Zurich Classic. Now, before we actually get into the video, I want to remind you guys there are timestamps in the description below. Those will detail all the items I'll be covering in this video. You can also find the timestamps in YouTube's progress bar. You just got to hover your mouse or finger over it and it'll show you what those timestamps are. But a quick overview, I'm going to basically be covering everything I typically do in a preview, minus historical salaries and optimal lineups, because DraftKings has not had a contest for this tournament ever. This is the first year it's ever done it. That's primarily because when DraftKings started making contests for every PGA Tour event, that was in 2017. And in 2017, this became a team event. So if you aren't aware of that, this is a team event, 2 golfers per team. And how the format of the tournament's going to work is they're going to do best balls on Thursdays and Saturdays. What that means is both golfers will play their golf ball from tee to finish, basically. And whoever scores the lowest score is the score they take. So let's just quickly go over that. Jon Rahm and Ryan Palmer are teammates. If John plays his golf ball all the way through the hole, scores a 4 on a hole, and Ryan plays his ball all the way through the hole, that's tee shot, approach, and putting, and he makes a 5, they're going to take John's score of a 4. So just so you're aware, that's how best ball works. And a lot of people confuse best ball with a scramble. A scramble is a whole entire different thing. That's where the team hits, they tee off and they pick the best tee shot, and then they go to approach. And obviously, if someone puts it closer to the hole, they end up taking that shot, so on and so forth. That's a scramble. That is not best ball. Please understand that. So yeah, best ball Thursdays, Saturdays, Friday, Sunday is going to be alternate shot. And what that's going to entail is, obviously, on one hole, let's use Jon Rahm and Ryan Palmer again. Let's say John tees off. It's a par 4. John tees off. Ryan hits the approach shot onto the green. John hits the putt, does not make it. Ryan makes the putt. Now, you might think logically it's John's tee shot on the next hole because he would come right after Ryan makes that putt. But you'd be wrong because it alternates per hole. Each golfer is going to choose either odd or even, and those are the number of holes that they're going to tee off of. So if John obviously selects odd, he's going to be teeing off on holes 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, so on and so forth. And obviously Ryan would be teeing off on the opposite holes, the even ones. There's strategy behind this. I don't think there's enough data to back the strategy to try to figure out, do we know Colin Morikawa is going to be playing all of the par 3s? Because obviously he's a really good approach player. Can he even play all the par 3s? We really don't know how that's going to work out. So don't get caught up on that. But if there was enough data and the teams remain the same every single year, that would be a good way to look at it. But yeah, I just wanted to inform you that this tournament was slightly different. But let's go ahead and get into the spreadsheet. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to start with the tournament fact sheets. So I like to do this in all my previews. It gives you a good understanding of the tournament, mostly the golf course. We are playing at TPC, Louisiana. This is in Avondale, Louisiana. It's a par 72, 7,400 yards, which is pretty average, a little on the short side of a par 72 here on the PGA Tour. And the stimp is running at a 12. I have heard that these greens are pretty flat. So a 12 is actually really good speed. If you ever see 11 on undulating greens, just remember some of those putts are downhill. They're going to be fast. You can't really have fast greens with undulating or with undulation. It's difficult. It makes downhill putts way too hard. So flat greens at 12, this just makes for optimal scoring conditions, as long as the weather cooperates, and we'll go over that after this. But yeah, obviously history. We'll go over target scores as well and past results. but low scores here are to be had. And that's what we can expect this week. Course statistics, I don't really cover a lot of this. The only thing that I really like to talk about are the number of holes that water's in play. We have 8 this week. If you have the data available, I do not, otherwise I would show you. I would avoid golfers who make a lot of penalties. There are, most of these guys on tour are really good, don't get me wrong, but some of them are a bit aggressive and some of them are a bit volatile with control on their golf ball. They find penalties and hazards far more frequently than other ones. Again, if you have the data, definitely look at it. This is definitely one of those golf courses where I think water is going to hurt those volatile golfers. But since I don't have it, I'm not going to continue talking about this. The only other piece that I would consider is the average green size. 5,200, I think, is under average, but I don't primarily care so much. Every week is different. So even if you have a really good ball striker in, say, Colin Morikawa, the smaller the greens get doesn't really promise that ball strikers are going to do better. That's usually the thought, the theory throughout the industry. I don't get caught up in that kind of stuff, but the information's in front of you. If you want to, perfect. The thing I really like to talk about is turf grass. I'm sure most of you guys know this if you keep coming back, which I appreciate if you do. This week we have greens that are TIFF Bermuda overseeded with POA and bent grass. Last week at the RBC Heritage, we had Bermuda grass. I can't remember exactly what strain it was, but we had Bermuda overseeded with POA. I used the POA stat in my strategy videos, my preview videos. I thought POA was the grass to go with. After watching the tournament and listening to the broadcast, I wasn't really persuaded by the broadcast so much as I was watching some of these guys putt. You can see at the RBC Heritage that the Bermuda actually did play a bigger effect than the POA did. One of the main characteristics of POA is that it's bumpy because as the grass flowers, there are buds on POA that make things a little bit bumpy. Whereas with Bermuda, there's grains of grass that you can always see something that's down grain and something that is into the grain. And if it's into the grain with Bermuda, it's just how it's cut. Basically, you can push Bermuda around fairly easy and the grass just stays. Think of it this way. Here's the best way to do it. If you were to gel your hair one direction, think about after it solidifies how hard it is to move it in the opposite direction. I suppose on camera I should go this way and then this way. But anyways, if you catch my drift, it's much more difficult to go into the grain than it is to go down the grain. And that's a lot like how Bermuda is. That played huge in the RBC Heritage. I think that's the same thing is going to happen here at the Zurich Classic. It's going to be more Bermuda than it is POA. But we have to consider both. It's a hybrid grass, and as soon as I get, a database up and running with a website attached to it, I'm going to show my interpretations of kind of the mixes that are together. Now, one of the other things to think about is whenever you overseed, you punch holes into the ground to remove to remove cores of grass that were there before. And then you reseed with the new grass that you're overseeding with, and then you top dress to basically try to drown out the other grass, the native grass that's there. So then all that comes through is the overseed. The same thing applies when you want it to come back to Bermuda. Now, there will be some Bermuda that can grow through the top dress and overseed from before, but it's not going to be as prevalent. I'm going to use another hair example here. Think about thinning hair. That is what the Bermuda would look like. It would be very, it's obviously not as luscious or thick. It's going to have, how do you explain it? it's just not going to have as much grass per square inch as it would if it wasn't overseeded. So when they want the Bermuda to come back, what they're going to do is plug holes into the green again, fill it with the Bermuda grass, and then top dress it as well to drown out the overseed so the Bermuda only comes through. Since it says overseed, that hasn't happened yet. So that means the overseed is going to affect the Bermuda. And the Bermuda just isn't as thick as it should be for it to really matter, but it's still a mix. So yeah, a very difficult way to look at it. I guess, long story short, if you're going to look at grass, look at both POA and Bermuda. But in all reality, there's probably only a few golf courses that have a mix like this. So you could look at the RBC Heritage. You could look at this course and other courses that have, the Bermuda probably coming through. Like, it's probably warm enough for Bermuda to be coming through. That's all I'm going to say on that. That was a lot longer than I needed to. Coursework architect is Pete Dye. This makes it 2 weeks in a row. And really, it's like the third time in the last 6 weeks, because the Players Championship was also a Pete Dye golf course. There are only 5 courses on tour that are the architect is Pete Dye. That was the American Express at PGA West. The Players Championship is another one. Obviously, last week at Heritage, Harbor Town Links. This course here, and then at the Travelers. Those are your only 5 courses on tour that are played at Pete Dye golf courses. Now, that's not a lot of data to use per year, but I think looking at this year's average finishing position at those might work to our benefit. Last week, it really didn't. There were some golfers who, if you looked at the data, weren't good on Pete Dye, like statistically. Stuart Sink, although he had won twice at Harbor Town Links before, wasn't really that great of a Pete Dye. I mean, I guess it's all course by. I just realized it's probably just more course by course than it is just Pete Dye in general. But his average finishing position wasn't that great on Pete Dye golf courses. But of course, that makes 3 wins at Harbor Town for Stuart Sink. He's good at that golf course, which it just happens to be a Pete Dye golf course. So I don't know. Use what you think. I will discuss Pete Dye stats as well as the grass stats. It's all going to be under grass stats. So if you want to skip ahead to that part of the video, go ahead in the timestamps. You can go and do that. You can also check out the additional notes here. To me, I don't care. You guys can read it on the screen. Let's go ahead and get into a weather forecast. Now, I have Avondale up, and we are looking at Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Really, we only care about Thursday, Friday because we don't know who's going to make the cut on Saturday, Sunday, and we don't know what their score is going to be after Friday's round. That would be some top-level stuff if you knew that. So it's not really important to talk about Saturday or Sunday's weather. But Friday seems like the only day that is in question. And here's my thought about it. So we see showers early and then scattered thunderstorms developing later in the day. It really depends when those thunderstorms are coming through. So I would advise checking the weather for this, for Avondale, Louisiana, Wednesday night, just to kind of get an idea if maybe you need to make pivots to other golfers, whether they're in the AM stack or in the PM stack. Because think about it this way. If a storm comes through, unless there are multiple storms to actually come through, which there are at times, but most of the time it's just one storm going through, it's going to halt play. It's going to delay play. And it depends on what time of the day that is. If there are still morning golfers out there that need to, to finish their round, they're probably playing in bad conditions prior to the delay. Because it's not like, I shouldn't say it's not like. Most of the time, a thunderstorm doesn't just, boom, happen. It's raining for a while, then the lightning comes into play or the electricity comes into play. That's when the PGA Tour would delay it. But you're probably most likely going to have to be playing through windy and wet conditions until the electricity shows up. Meaning those guys that are on the golf course are going to struggle with that. Obviously, those that have not yet played, or let's say everyone is on the course, the morning has already gone through and now it's the afternoon, they're going to get delayed and come back later when the conditions are probably calmer. Again, if there's not a second storm running through, which probably has more electricity, let's be real here, it's more likely going to be calm. And with that meaning, the scoring conditions are going to be so good because wind goes with a storm most of the time. Once a storm passes through, it's relatively calm. So all I'm trying to say is if you know when that thunderstorm is coming through and you know the afternoon players still have the majority of the holes to play, I would target those guys because they're going to have, it's not going to be pristine, but they're going to be easier conditions. Ball's going to land softer. It's going to be easier to control. I would target those guys. But if it's like in the middle of the day where morning guys are going to get hit and afternoon guys are going to get hit. Actually, I should say this. No, I don't know when a perfect time would be. If that thunderstorm doesn't hit until like 5 p.m., 6 p.m., play all your morning guys. Because I don't think they're going to have hard weather conditions. But if that thunderstorm comes in at like 2 p.m., 3 p.m., then I would target the afternoon guys. Actually, even the morning guys too. Perhaps the best plays just always go PM, AM. I don't know. That's probably way too much overthinking it. I never really even use 6 golfers from the same wave. If I do, like the same stack, AM, PM stack, if I do, it's by mistake. I honestly, I don't target that, but I consider it in tie-breaking situations. Like if I'm going to target one guy, let's say if I'm going to make a core of golfers, I might make, those core of golfers one stack or the other, or consider it at least. So that's just my 2 cents. Let's go ahead and move on to the course breakdown. I'm not going to spend time talking about each hole. What I'm going to let you guys do is pause the video, read the description that I have for the hole. You can see holes 1 through 9 on the screen. Let me go scroll down to holes 10 through 18. Again, read what is on there. I'm only going to talk about the summary here, which basically covers all of the off the tee shots, the approach shots, and those that just don't matter. What I found out is off the tee doesn't really matter. There aren't trees that dictate anything. There isn't, usually it's just trees that dictate what type of shot shape you need to hit. This isn't a tree-lined golf course. It's kind of open. There are a lot of bunkers that surround the fairways, and there is water here and there as well. That doesn't really dictate a shot shape. Unless it's a tight landing and you want to match the contour of the golf course, it doesn't really matter what type of shot shape you need to hit. What does matter, though, is hitting some of these shots into the green where the green is positioned, one way or another. So if the front portion of the green sits more on the, when you're looking at it, it's more on the front right portion of the green, and then the back side of the green is, back left, if you can think what I'm trying to say, or it's diagonal away from you, you'd want to hit a draw into that green as a right-handed golfer, because that gives you more green to work with as opposed to hitting a fade where you're kind of like coming into it perpendicular. If it runs narrow from front right to back left, you don't have a lot of green to work with. So that's why some of these do have draws. Now, one thing that I have to mention is 2 of these draw approach shots are par 5s. So if they're not going for the green in 2, doesn't even matter. These draws are irrelevant. It's only for shots going for the green in 2. For these par 3s, there's water on the left side. And I'm always a proponent to always play your shot shape into the water, not out of the water. So obviously, if there's water to your left, if you're hitting a fade, that means you're going over the water right away and fading it away from the water. If your fade doesn't come back, your drop zone is 2 feet in front of you, or it's a re-tee. If you were to draw it, say, behind the green, now you get to drop it behind the green, within two club lengths, which might make an easier shot, but it could also make a difficult shot, and you might want to re-tee anyways or find the drop zone. But either way, to me, whenever you have hazard on one side, it's better to play into it than away from it for shot shapes. I'm not really necessarily saying, hitting a shot away from the water is a bad thing, but you definitely don't want to start a ball over the hazard, especially if you don't have that greatest control over the golf ball, which most of these guys do, but some guys can't hit fades and some guys can't hit draws. Just face the facts. Anyways, the other hole where I have anything for approach is also on a par 5, and that's to hit a fade. So again, if they're not going for the green in 2, this drive doesn't matter. Nor does this off the tee shot. So just take that in consideration. This seems like a pretty neutral golf course. Might favor long ball hitters that hit a draw, right-handed hitters that hit a draw, or left-handed hitters that hit a cut, like a Bubba Watson, for instance. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's look at past results and target scores. Now you can see 2019, 2018, 2017, I have numbers that match each other. That would indicate this was a team event. It may not look that way all the time, but the fact that there are 2 guys that have number 1, I never ever do that in my results. So this should let you know that this is a team event. Unfortunately, I wasn't as smart to actually add the team information in 2018 or 2017. I imagine that everything is in order here, like every 2 is a teammate, but I can't be sure. I don't know that because I don't have the team names like I do here, or the team numbers. But you can see 26 under is pretty easy to get to. It's going to be north of 20 under, or I should say south of 20 under, because we're going further under par. To me, just seeing these scores here would indicate it's going to be somewhere between, I think it's going to be somewhere between 25 and 28 under. But if we look at the individual scores, so prior to this becoming a team event, golfers got to 20 under pretty easy. I shouldn't say pretty easy. You obviously see it a few times, but still, when the greens are flat and, they're stimped at a 12, again, I think there's optimal scoring conditions. So I do believe we will see optimal scoring conditions for this week. And I guess that's all I have to say about that. Now, one thing that I do want to add, and I should have probably done this earlier, or I'm trying to think, would it be beneficial to do it now, or should I have done it earlier, or should I do it later? I think what I'm going to do is just add it now. A slight advantage that you might get is finding golfers that actually play the same type of golf ball. A really good, like if you don't believe in that, watch the Subpar podcast with Colt Knost and Drew Stoltz, with John Rahm, the second appearance John Rahm did. They talked about him switching to Callaway, and John was like, the biggest thing that I was worried about was the golf ball, because, changing golf balls is the hardest thing to do on tour. John Rahm, number 3 in the world, said that. So again, you can go, I'm citing Subpar if you want to listen to it. If you don't want to take my word for it, take his. Changing golf balls is difficult. So if there's a Callaway guy playing with the Titleist guy, you might have something to worry about when it comes to alternate shot. Because obviously you pick a golf ball that you're playing with and you go throughout the hole with that golf ball. If John Rahm, who's now a Callaway guy, I think Ryan Palmer is still a TaylorMade guy. Could be wrong on that, but let's say John Rahm tees off with a Callaway golf ball. Ryan Palmer, if he's, obviously if they're playing alternate shot, he has to hit the golf ball where it's laying. He doesn't get to pick it up and put his golf ball down. He has to play John Rahm's golf ball. So that is a slight advantage. I'm not going to put all of my eggs into that basket, but it is a good way to kind of differentiate yourself. So I think on the PGA Tour leaderboard, since it's sponsored by Titleist, and Titleist is one of them, you can see who hits a Titleist golf ball. They don't show they don't show any other golf ball. So you're going to have to know that information or dig it up somehow if you want to have that advantage. But I think it's worth noting, find a guy who has the same golf ball. And you could primarily do that by remembering what brands they hit. So usually, well, I shouldn't say usually. Yeah, you're gonna have to just do the research on your own. I don't have that data. I'm going to look into it because I do think it's important. But yeah, you're gonna have to do that on your own. Let's go ahead and move to the next piece. What I want to do is kind of go over every year, so 2019 to 2017 for this team event, and just look at the course history and recent form that golfers were coming into this event with. As you can see in 2019, here at the top, really didn't matter with course history. A lot of bad course history, actually, with a lot of golfers north of 60 for their average finishing position at this golf course. Now, some of these come from the team event. Some of this comes from the individual tournaments from 2016 to 2013. So take it however you want, I guess. But it kind of goes to show that when it comes to this team event, it's all about who can ham and egg it the best. Several people in the industry have discussed this. If a team were to make 12 birdies, but 8 of those birdies were on 4 holes, if you think about it, each of those, each golfer in the team makes a birdie on 4 holes, that would equal 8 birdies. That means only 4 other birdies get to be distributed through amongst the other holes. At most, you can only be 8 under with that type of scoring if 8 of those birdies happen on the same 4 holes. You really want birdies to happen at different times. For one golfer to get it on one hole and the other golfer to get it on another hole. Now, there are obviously par 5s here. More often than not, birdie's going to be the score that most players make, and I shouldn't even say most. Some of the players will make. It's obviously, I should say this. It's the best opportunity where you're going to see the same score between the players. So really, that's only 4 holes. But again, if those 8 birdies happen on those 4 holes, kind of stinks for the team. The other thing I want to talk about is, I should have said this during the course breakdown, but there are some drivable par 4s. And it all matters on who's teeing off first. If someone gets it in play and there's a bomber left, he's probably going to go for the green. So consider that. I would actually favor golfers who can get into another gear, like a Bubba Watson, a Jon Rahm. Scotty Scheffler's playing with Bubba Watson, so that's actually a decent play. But I'm kind of branching out, spiderwebbing here. Talking about recent form and course history, you can see that it's all, anybody really can do well. It's all about the team. How well does the team play? Some of these guys don't even have course history, but you can see the majority of these guys kind of have bad course history and kind of bad recent form. I would definitely target guys that are on a team that are either friends or who have proven to play well in the past together. Course history, recent form. A better way to look at this is actually looking at the bucket system. Now, we don't have last year stats to go by, so we're not going to look at last year buckets, but we can take a look at last week buckets, course history, and recent form buckets just to see which actually matter and which don't. If you haven't seen, or if you don't understand what the bucket system is, I'm going to link a video, top right-hand corner. But yeah, I'm not gonna really spend much time explaining it. Basically, I'm looking at the frequency of what bucket happens to show up inside the top 10. These buckets are divided by ranges. You can see what the range is: 1 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 plus. So when we look at last week, this is last week's finishing position. Golfers who fall in that 1 to 20th place range fall into this bucket. And that likewise goes for 20 to 40. These are ranked based off of the frequencies that we see from 2013 to 2020 finishing inside the top 10. That's all I care about, is looking at golfers inside the top 10, because I'm always searching for the optimal lineup. You need all 6 players inside the top 10 more often than not to hit the optimal lineup. So one way to do that, obviously, is to analyze the top 10. And this is my way to do it, is just create some buckets and throw the golfers into it. See which buckets rank out best. Just off the numbers alone, your number one bucket is golfers who did not play the week before. Your second bucket, golfers who missed the cut or withdrew. Third bucket are golfers that top 20'd the week before, and you can see what the rest of them are just by the logic that I gave. The other way you can look at this is their success rate. So what this means is, of all the golfers that fell into this bucket from 2013 to 2020, that percentage of them showed up inside the top 10. I was trying to think of a different word than showed up, but showed up inside the top 10. So bucket 3 actually has the best success rate at 14.85%. And then we have a bunch of guys here at 11. And in fact, they're so close to each other. 11.6 for the did not play bucket, which is your number one bucket. 11.58 for the last week 4 bucket, that 40 to 60. And then 11.54 for the last week 5 bucket, that's 60 to 80 finishing position. What I found out at the RBC Heritage, and what I've kind of figured out throughout the entire time I've been doing these previews, is we need to look at the average amount that happened every single year and compare it to what we see this year. Primarily because COVID did so many different things for this year. We don't have a Korn Ferry graduation. We also don't have PGA Tour pros losing their card. So we see a lot of the same guys that were on tour last year playing in the events this year, meaning we don't have as many did not plays. And it would be more for like last year and course history. Obviously last week, it's a little bit of a different story because golfers get to choose which tournaments they're playing and which tournaments they're not. But again, those COVID things, or the COVID thing from last year, plays effect into these numbers. Whenever we see the number lower than the average per year, one thing to assume is the success rate is going to be lower for that bucket. A lot of these aren't volume-driven buckets, but just having a difference between of 4 golfers in an already small bucket is going to, it's going to affect this bucket. I wouldn't say considerably, but reasonably. To me, I think the success rate is a little lower. We could probably anticipate, of these 10 guys, 1 to 2 of them will probably finish inside the top 10. That's my guess, is 1 to 2 golfers who top 20 the week before. Again, you only have to choose from 10 of them. I think those are your guys you want to choose from. Why don't we look at them to see who they possibly could be? Let me go ahead and throw a filter on that. And we are only looking at top 10. So let's go ahead and look at less than or equal to 20. And not top 10. I'm looking for, golfers in that 1 to 20 range. So again, we only have 10 golfers to choose from. And I guess the first thought is Collin Morikawa, right? Just him alone seems like a good golfer to choose from. Remember, his teammate, actually, I didn't even say this. Should have said this earlier. It doesn't matter who you choose. Collin Morikawa or his teammate, their score is going to be the same no matter what. So when we look at stats, that's what I was kind of getting at earlier in this video, is when we look at stats, it's going to be difficult. I know some people are combining stats together and then finding their average. That's one way to do it. I don't think that's really the key way to do it. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what ends up working out. But for me, I'm still going to look at players individually for the mere fact that we're more likely going to see some of these guys in the top 10 together. Gosh, I should have put their teammates with them, because I can't tell you who all of the teammates are for these guys. I mean, I know Collin Morikawa is playing with Matthew Wolff. I know Cameron Smith is playing with Mark Leishman. But then when we look at this, we probably want to look at the golf ball that they're using. Is it the same? Is it different? And really, that's probably the only thing I care about. Friends is another thing to think about too. The one thing I should mention is, do we see any of the teams together If so, I would say, yeah, I probably want to choose them. But either way, my eyes first go to Colin Morikawa. I think that would be a decent play, followed by Cameron Smith. But if you didn't want to play any of these high-price guys, Charlie Hoffman's not a bad play down here at 8,400. Neither is Matt Wallace. Course history doesn't matter, and I don't think Matt Wallace has course history. He does not. But yeah, of these 10 guys, who are you playing? I don't mind any of them. Like, I like them all. So it's going to be hard to try to determine which one to play. And again, I think 1 to 2 of these guys are going to finish inside the top 10. I don't know exactly, any more than that. I will say this, when we look at the summary, we've had a max of 4 finish inside the top 10. So you could play up to 4 of those guys, and it'd be fine with me. I do think this number is going to lessen though. So I think 3 should be your max. But yeah, that's a pretty decent play. I'm not going to look at your last week bucket 1 guys because there are 80 in that bucket. But I think, yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. You can see what the other buckets are. You can see what their top 5 success rate is, basically their top 20 success rate. When we look at something like this, why this number is at 0% makes no sense. You can't be perfect all the time. And some of these numbers I know are incorrect. I shouldn't say it that way. I just know there's a point where, for whatever reason, these numbers are 1 less than what they should be. It's so stupid. This will fix it though. I think I need to change it for this as well. Yeah, sometimes when I copy this data from week to week, it does this, and I forget to double check it sometimes. There you go. This one I need to change as well. So it's whatever. It's this top 20 field bucket for whatever reason. There we go. Now the numbers will be correct. I don't have to worry about it. Okay, there we go. You can also look at top 20 percentage. That last year 3 bucket plays big, and then the make cut percentage is another one you could go by as well. Personally, I don't really care. Let's go ahead and move on to, how about course history? So course history, although I say it goes from 2013 to 2020, I don't have course history until 2015. So 2015 to 2020 is what course history buckets are looking at. So the numbers are smaller, if you're wondering that. Your number 1 bucket, golfers who did not play. So who have 0 course history. That is your number 1 bucket. We've seen 22 instances from 2015 to 2020. That is 6 more than the second bucket, which is the 60 to 80 range. So golfers with an average finishing position at this event between 60 and 80 fall into this bucket. Your 3rd ranked bucket are those that have an average finishing position of 40 to 60 at this golf course. And I'm not really going to talk about the other ones, but you can see the numbers are really tight. They're so close to each other. They're within 3. So it's, to me, the rankings, not the biggest deal breaker to go with. Usually I want to avoid 5s and 6s, but you can see how close it all comes together. And to me, all that means is this is just one of those golf courses that probably don't have those many holes that require course knowledge. Like at the Masters, Augusta, you need to play it so many times to understand all the little breaks, where to hit your tee shot, stuff like that. This seems probably like a bomb and gouge type of golf course, in my opinion. I mean, if we're seeing how uniform this number is, or these numbers are, it's just not proving that course history matters all that much. But when it comes to success rate, you can see there's a 24% success rate for your course history 5 bucket. Next would be your course history 4 bucket. So better the course history, the better the success rate. On average, we see 10 guys in this course history 5 bucket, but this year we see 8. Now, if we look at our min maxes, you can see this shows you the least amount of times we've seen it any given year. Meaning we've seen it at least once for course history 5, at least once for 4, 2, 6, and 1. To me, again, look at this year totals versus average. Most of them are pretty on par. Obviously, Course History 5 kind of falters a little bit, as does Course History 6. And so does 1, but just barely. So those numbers are down. These numbers are up, but not by much. So we can kind of anticipate these numbers being pretty true. Meaning you want to probably play at least some of these guys, at least once. Which means I don't have a bucket to really go over. We can look at this one since there's only 8 golfers in it. And perhaps maybe Course History 4. So let's go ahead and look at those guys. I didn't even have to go all the way over here. I totally forgot I already populated these. So I can go to Course History 5 and 4, but we'll start with 5. We don't have a lot, remember. Xander Schauffele, Kevin Kisner, Scott Brown, Graham McDowell, K.H. Lee, David Hearn, Hank Lebioda, and Grayson Murray. The first thing that pops out to me is Kisner and Brown are teammates. If, let's say, this summary here, if we see more than one, let's put it a different way. If Kevin Kisner and Scott Brown do finish inside the top 10, that means we're going to see 2 guys, obviously, out of that bucket finish inside the top 10. So I think the possibility is there. And it's actually something worth pursuing. I think that's okay. This team, not too bad. We already talked about Xander. Did we? No, I don't think we did. Never mind. I thought we did. No, he didn't have a last week finishing position. Did anyone finish inside the top 20? No. Okay, so out of this whole group, I mean, I'm probably avoiding these guys down here. I like some of these guys up here. And again, it's the minimum at least is 1. I don't know. It's, Xander. Xander's in the best group. He's playing with Patrick Cantlay. So I could see him moving this bucket forward where it could be just 1. But anyways, that's up to you guys to decide. We can take a look at bucket 4 now for Course History, and there's Patrick Cantlay. So, dang. Kind of thinking Patrick Cantlay and Xander are a good team to play. Mark Leishman, who is Cam Smith's partner, we already talked about that with the last week bucket. They could, push these buckets that they, that have high success rates further. Now, this bucket is really good. Watson, Horschel, Sungjae. I'm not really seeing any 6K golfers I really want to play, but even like Charlie Hoffman's in it, although he has Nick Watney as a partner. I guess they're both in this bucket, which to me, I guess, I don't know how I feel about that. I think I probably like them less. I don't think this is a bucket where we see that many come out of it, right? 4 at max, at least 1, 15.38%. Let's say that's 20% out of 2. That means 4 would go through. So I'm guessing 3. We could probably see 3 just based off of numbers alone go through. Sure. Hoffman and Watney could get it done, but I'm not putting my money on it. Okay. So I'm just going to discuss those 2 buckets. Obviously, if you have your own way of finding this data, recent form, again, is just 2013 to 2020. I shouldn't say recent form. Course history was 2013 to 2020. My recent form goes back 6 weeks. No. Goes back 7 weeks. 8 if you include this tournament. So if you want to look at your own stats, that's one way to do it. Recent form buckets. Your number 1 bucket is that 40 to 60 average finishing position over the last 8 weeks. Number 2 bucket, 60 to 80. 3 is 20 to 40. And 4 is 1 to 20. Now, when it comes to success rates, your recent form bucket 4, your fourth ranked bucket for recent form has the highest success rate, 26.67%, followed by 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and it kind of goes down the line, just as is. meaning having better recent form is the way to go. Again, we can review how many we see per year versus how many we see this year. And for that bucket, it actually turns out to be pretty decent. So following this bucket's really good. Again, 26.67% out of 4, that's 1. We can anticipate at least one guy coming from this bucket finishing inside the top 10. So who is that? It's probably going to be another difficult decision. So recent form 4, we have Rahm, Smith, Kirk, and Hoffman. We already talked about Hoffman and Smith. More reasons to pick these guys. At least for Smith. Smith had Leishman. It might not be, this is going to be a lineup I'm definitely going to anchor around. And I'm probably going to anchor around Jon Rahm, and I'm probably going to anchor around Xander Schauffele. Because so far I've seen those guys, inside these buckets. And if we're choosing one of these guys, gosh, it's a difficult choice. And maybe this is who I choose my anchors around. Any of these guys. Or I could be super risky and just choose one of them. That's another way to go about it. Let's go ahead and look at the other bucket. So we can take a look at this one. That's pretty small. This is your second highest success rate, recent form bucket 3. A minimum of 2. So any given year going back to 2013, we've seen at least 2 golfers from this bucket finish inside the top 10. That's kind of remarkable. So we have 16 this year. That's 5 less than average. We could probably bump these numbers down. I would say 0 to 4. But let's say this was 20%, 1.6. That equal what, 3? So we're probably seeing at most 3 guys from this bucket finish inside the top 10. Let's see what those guys are. So there we go. Palmer shows up. He was paired with Jon Rahm, so that could, boost that group up a little bit. I've not seen Matthew Wolff yet. This is the second time seeing Colin Morikawa, so that's not terrible. Sung J M we've seen also, so not terrible either to anchor into your lineups around those guys. First time I think seeing Taylor Gooch or anybody in that team together. I don't have any Oh yeah, we do have pairs. Brendan Steele and Keegan Bradley. So yeah, I guess if you think that anybody in this group is going to move forward, you think that the number is going to be high, it might be because Keegan Bradley and Brendan Steele come out of it together. I'm going to guess that we're probably going to see Palmer, Morikawa, Gooch, or Sung J M, if I'm guessing. I also do like Jason Kokrak, so that's also a possibility. And Chase Seifert. I don't mind that. So yeah, should we take a look at another bucket? This has a minimum of 3. We do see 10 less. So I'm going to bump this down to 1. I think we're going to see at least 1 recent form 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Anybody that pop out? Xander, Mark Leishman. So there we go. Another reason to play Cam Smith and Mark Leishman. Xander. These guys are playing together. Scheffler and Watson, as is Finau and Champ. So actually, this bucket has a really good opportunity to actually have more than just 1 come out of it because of all the pairings that we're seeing together. It's pretty large, so just pause the video and pick out a golfer you like and maybe anchor your lineups around them. But I think that's going to cover it for the buckets. I don't think I have anything else to say about the buckets. Again, we don't have last year. So when we go through this, obviously these are where I store the buckets on the dream sheet. If you do see golfers that you like, when we scroll through, grass stats or whatever, obviously keep in mind their bucket scores here and what I just discussed. Let's go ahead and look at your best Bermuda golfers. Now we're going to go into grass stats. And this is probably going to be the last segment. Grass stats will include Bermuda and Pete Dye events. So let's go ahead and sort from top to bottom. Don't mind these numbers here. I did not yet update this. It's more for review than it is for preview. So your number 1 golfer is Colin Morikawa on Bermuda grass. 11 events, 54% showing inside the top 10. That includes the Workday Championship, the WGC event that happened this year, which is a limited field, but still, he won that tournament. I can't remember the other ones that he played in, but either way, this year he has a 5 average finishing position, which is really good. Patrick Cantlay comes in second. In fact, of teams together, I think they're the best, right? Yeah, 1-1. So Xander's here. Patrick Cantlay's there, so another good reason to play those guys together. We do see Ryan Palmer and Jon Rahm just underneath them. So also not terrible. Let's see, do we see anybody else? Oh, Scotty Scheffler and Bubba Watson are actually rated better on Bermuda stats than Jon Rahm and Ryan Palmer. Do we see anybody else? I do not. So either way, these are basically your top 20 guys, or the guys that are top 20 for Bermuda. Chris Kirk falls into that. He would be number 20 on the list. We see Tyrrell Hatton up there. A lot of your good golfers. Your cheapest golfer would be Brandt Snedeker, which not a terrible play, especially on a team event. I guess I don't mind that. One rule I usually like to follow, I'm not sure I'm going to do it this week because I'm not positive how the team events are going to be. I usually never want to play anyone that has less than 5% top 10 success rate, basically. So that is the amount of times them finishing inside the top 10. If it's better than 5%, I usually like to play them. If it's not, I don't like to play them. You can see Doug Gim. Doug Gim has not played well on Bermuda surfaces. And if we include the RBC Heritage from last week, he didn't do that well there either. He did make the cut, but you can see all the guys with 0% success rate of finishing inside the top 10 on Bermuda golf courses. I usually also like to avoid the guys here that have less than 5%. So this is actually making up quite a bit of golfers, 52 in fact, that I probably just don't feel that comfortable playing. Most of them are in the 7K, 6K range, but you see Joel Damon here, 9K, 3.45%. Justin Suh, 8,100. He only has 3 events under his belt, so that's another thing to take into consideration. Same with Akshay Bhatia. He only has 3 events under his belt as well. So these guys with limited events probably don't grade them that difficult. But like Danny Willett, that's not good. Now he is playing with Tyrrell Hatton, who has a top 20 overall Bermuda average in this field, but paired up with Danny Willett, I mean, maybe Danny Willett has some bad putting rounds. Thomas Peters has 8 events under his belt. One of my favorite golfers, probably not playing much of them this year or this week because, I mean, his Bermuda stats look terrible. And then Matthew Wolff. Matthew Wolff, 0% top 10 percentage on Bermuda grass. Now, he is paired with Colin Morikawa, who has the best overall Bermuda finish or average finishing position. So that's something to think about too. So this was basically your bottom and your top guys for Bermuda stats. If you didn't see anyone, as I scrolled up and down, chances are they're a good play. And don't mind that. Let's go ahead and go over overall Pete Dye average. Again, this is not updated, so don't mind me. Your best overall Dye average finishing position belongs to Chase Seifert. Next is Patrick Cantlay. So Cantlay shows up there once again, a pretty decent teammate, as well as Jon Rahm. Now, I don't see Cantlay's partner in Xander at all. So Xander not that great on Pete Dye. Maybe Patrick Cantlay can help him. That actually goes with everyone I was just talking about, who has a good partner and then a bad one. But anyways, our best group, Justin Rose and Henrik Stenson. Wow. I didn't think I'd actually have to talk about Justin Rose or Henrik Stenson in this video, but here we are. They together are the team that is highest amongst the best finishes on Pete Dye golf courses. Trying to see if I find any other pairings, and I really don't. Just trying to eyeball it. If you do see them, let me know in the comments. But yeah, it's just those. It's really just that one pairing, Justin Rose and Henrik Stenson. But yeah, Patrick Cantlay, Jon Rahm, another good reason to anchor with those guys. And then looking at your 0%, this I'm going to say doesn't matter as much. We saw this at the RBC Heritage. We saw a bunch of guys that finished inside the top 10 that had 0% or less than 5. So I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb here and say we're probably going to see some guys with these percentages inside the top 10. I don't think it's going to be a lot, and you can kind of see some of these guys over here. More reasons not to play Justin Suh or Thomas Peter. Actually, that's not true. They only have one event under their belt. That's not fair. Matt Jones might be one guy because he has 23 events. Ricky Barnes, probably not playing Ricky Barnes anyways. James Hahn, that's crazy. Fabian Gomez, Jonathan Bird, Sung King, Johnson Wagner. Yeah, those are guys we probably already know we're not going to play anyways, but further proof, don't waste a lineup on any of those guys. Let me just give you the best top 10 percentages for each of these. So here you go with the Pete Dye, Cantlay up at top. And I see Bubba and Scotty Scheffler with top 10 percentage, pretty decent. Looking at top 10 Bermuda percentage, Morikawa, Rahm, Rose, Im, Xander. So mix Xander's Bermuda with Cantlay's. Well, I mean, Cantlay is also good on Bermuda. Yeah. So lots of decisions to make. And this is going to be interesting because it's a team event. You have to decide who to play. Again, it goes by team number. So I guess if I were to go ahead and sort it by team number, you can only play one of these guys. So obviously you can't play Xander and Patrick Cantlay to try to get double points. It's just not going to work out. You can only pick one, and that's fine. But I think my favorite plays, honestly, I like Xander and Patrick Cantlay together. Yeah, they have some 5s for their bucket scores, but they're not terrible. They're in small groups and a high success rate for those buckets. I do like them together. But my number one ranked group would be Palmer and Jon Rahm. So they also showed up in some of the stats we were talking about, the buckets and the rest of the stuff. I think they're a good play. Actually, I don't mind any of these guys up top. If there was a group that I don't care for that much, it would be Morikawa and Wolff, because Wolff has just not been playing that great at all. This might be the group that I just omit from picking lineups from and try to move forward from there. So this is an interesting, here's something I just realized. On average, 10K and above, we only see, like if this was an individual tournament, we usually only see 5 to 6 golfers, 10K and above. And there are 18 total that I just highlighted. That means if you cut it in half, that's 9. There are more 10K and above golfers here if we were to try to make it an individual tournament than we see anywhere else. So they're actually trying to make pricing difficult, like adding golfers together, which it is what it is. I'm probably going to follow the 10K and above, select one guy from the 9K, probably one guy from 8K, 2 from 7, 1 from 6. But I might avoid 6 altogether. We'll see. I'll double check, but I guess check back on the strategy video. I'll let you know what I'm doing there. But it's most likely going to anchor with one of these guys here up at the top, and then move down the leaderboard as I see fit. So that is all I have for you guys. I went over everything I wanted to. So thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the strategy video tomorrow. All right, bye.